Chapter 3. Rule 2. Small crimes aren't really crimes. Madrid, Spain. Toledo was kind to me. A one-night stand with no illusions. No strings and you get all you need. In, out, repeat, out. I got some deodorant, toothpaste, and a haircut. 6 curly brown inches was a small price to pay for anonymity. I had a crew cut and a patchy beard, and I finally smelled like a man from the 21st century. I kept going straight to Madrid. I never spoke about anything outside of the weather and food. Who wants to end up on a median twice? I arrived in Madrid on a blistering Sunday afternoon to a concert of church bells. An exodus of sweaty Spaniards leaked from stained glass steeples into their post-mass siesta, and the resonant dings and dongs sucked the energy out of everyone. A fugitive couldn't ask for better cover. I had just enough money to book one night in a cheap hostel, and I hadn't eaten in 3 days. Easier to beg for food than for shelter. Corner stores immediately came to mind. Personal and poor. CVS will never care about your feelings, but a corner store just might. That in mind, I set out to see what alms I could manage. Sundays are holy, after all. Maybe someone will be in a giving mood. I walked along the Manzanares River until I reached a rundown block near the Plaza de Oriente to look for a corner store. Like I said, those with nothing tend to be the readiest to give. Fucked, I know, but that's how it is. Take it up with Adam Smith. Sending a glance down a side street, I spotted an unnamed hole in the wall that screamed, "I have nothing." Bingo! I passed a few sketchy guys loitering outside. If I was a woman or a child, they'd have sent chills down my back. As it was, though, I probably looked sketchier than they did, and they opened a path for me like I was Moses. The question of honesty entered my thoughts as I pushed through the smeared glass door. On the one hand, I like the idea of honesty a lot. Truthfulness is a sort of kindness to yourself. You can tell the truth to someone and hurt them, and you can lie to them for their own benefit. When it comes to yourself, though, it always feels better to be honest. Still, it turns out feelings don't have much to do with survival. Most of us don't have to fight to survive every day, so instead we fight to feel good. I devoted my life to those daily battles. But none of that mattered. I was nothing more than a gazelle, stripped of the safety of its herd. The herd was ahead, somewhere else. They'd already forgotten me. Not a friend left. I'd run until I tripped or stopped and died. No time for self-esteem. I'd lost my right to live and plummeted back down Maslow's pyramid. Safety. Survival. I walked up to the checkout and made up my mind. Lie. "Hello, sir. How are you doing this afternoon?" I asked with a timid smile flourishing on my lips. "Fine," the clerk said, more zombie than human. "How can I help you?" "Well, you see, my wife just recently passed away, and now I've got to raise our little son alone. My wife, she had a bad habit of gambling. She wasn't very good at it either. Still, every dime she touched went to the casinos." I said, closing my eyes and pausing with a drawn-out sigh. I dropped my lips into a frown and continued. "After she passed, some men came to our apartment and demanded I pay her debts. Debts I didn't even know she'd racked up. About 50,000 euros, no less." Still, the clerk held the blank stare. "Geez, it's like The Walking Dead with this guy." "And?" "Well, sir, I gave those guys everything. Practically handed them the clothes on my back." "Perfect," I chuckled. He didn't chuckle. "So, anyway, it's just me and the kid now, and, well, I don't have any money left, but my kid and I were starving. Do you have—" "No, you didn't even hear me out yet," I responded, my cheeks flooding with crimson. "I don't care for freeloaders. Sorry, buddy. I can't help you." "Oh, wait, all I'm asking for is maybe a sandwich. Me and my boy can split it even, just one." "Do you have 3 euros?" "Well, no, but then don't waste my time. Get out." "Please, sir, just one—" "Get the fuck out," he yelled, jerking his head at the door. One of the loiterers passed his amigo some change and glared at me. His stare harpooned my chest as I walked out of the store. He'd lost his bet, and I was starving. We're all just a bunch of losers, huh? I took a hard right, determined to find another corner store and invent a stronger story. I couldn't blame the clerk. I lied what I thought was a great lie. Maybe it was. Still, it had nothing to do with him. My problem, not his. His sandwich, not mine. How could I expect the man to care? I'd given up on caring myself. Halfway down the block, a man grabbed my shoulder. I wheeled around instantly. Shit! Cops? Here? How? Really? Shit! The disheveled man who grabbed me sported an unkempt beard and probably hadn't cut his hair in over 4 months. His white button-down shirt boasted wrinkles and sporadic stains, some brown and some yellow, and his tattered khakis were in similar condition. He was strong by the look of it, but his youth hid under the wool of poverty. My friend, you are hungry, he grinned. It wasn't a question. This was a man who knew hunger well. In fact, he seemed like he was always hungry. Yet he displayed none of its symptoms. The man existed beyond hunger, or so it seemed to me. Yeah, I guess so, I said. He laughed deeply, squeezing his diaphragm like an opera singer. You must have no initiative, my friend. No drive, he said, patting my shoulder. Trying to rely on kindness for your food. Man, you're acting like a woman. Whoa there. A little sexist, are we? What are you talking about? I raised an eyebrow. I saw the whole thing from outside, he said, gesturing back to the store with a wink. There's usually a lot of good street fights around here. Especially this block, so it's one of my favorite spots to, fuck off to. Anyways, you tried telling the clerk some lame story to get free food, right? Well, yeah, I said. Yeah, just some shitty lie about a dead wife and a hungry kid. I really don't have any money, though, and I really am starving. Those are true. Dead wife, huh? He paused, and his eyes mingled with the clouds. I wish I had had the pleasure of seeing my last 2 wives bite it. Total bitches, let me tell you. Always nagging at me and asking me to help them around the house. Do dishes, laundry, stupid shit like that. Women these days are so, uppity. Yeah, uppity. Good word. They really need to learn their place, know what I'm saying? Great. So I'm dealing with a moron. Well, that part was all made up. The whole deal about the wife and the kid. It's just me. Like I said, though, I am starving. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna go think of a better story and find some dinner. The man summoned another laugh from his gut, shook his head. Follow me. Huh? No, I really have to get going, I replied. I don't like street fights much anyway. I don't like street fights. I love street fights. I used to watch UFC fights back home. John Jones, Conor McGregor, Joe Rogan. I knew all the names. It was the only sport I watched. Something about the brutality of a cage fight resurrected the ghosts of fierce warriors in my blood. Sometimes I dream about being a gladiator in Rome, fighting for my life. It was a happy dream, but I think I romanticized it too much. Begging won't get you free food, my friend. Stealing will. The man firmly gripped my shoulder. He'd broken character completely in an instant. Who the fuck is this guy? I stared at the grim face before me, his crow's feet and smile lines dormant under the sudden wave of intensity. Stealing. That's an idea, I guess. He released my shoulder and a smile turned up the brightness on his face. Besides, I steal 3 meals a day, he chuckled. I'm an expert. He began walking down the road and I stood frozen, watching him stroll away from me for a few seconds without turning. He shot over his shoulder. You coming or what? He took me to the plaza, and we sat on an old wooden bench. By the way, he said, my name is Juan Marco Dados. I don't think I got your name, my friend. Oh, I replied. It's Pat. Well, Pat, you have no money and you need to eat, plain and simple. Lucky for you, I'm a seasoned professional at getting food without handing over a single euro. He smirked and turned his gaze to the fountain at the center of the plaza. My compassion, or whatever was left of it, demanded a question. What about the people you take the food from? Like that clerk, I asked. He offered me a puzzled look, as if I'd spoken a foreign language. My Spanish isn't great, to be fair. Sure, I'm hungry and I have no money, but I'm not that much of a dick. The guy's just some shabby store clerk. If you wanted to give me something, that'd be one thing, but stealing it would just be wrong. Juan Marco sat for a second and arched an eyebrow. You see that man there? He pointed at the fountain. Yeah, I said. Philip or whatever, right? Yes. Philip the Fourth, an old king of Spain and a man of God. I'm a man of great faith. Are you, Pat? He asked. Religion nut too, huh? Sure. I guess so. Well, it says in the Gospel of Matthew that any prayer asked in total faith is bound to be answered, he said. Okay. The fuck's that got to do with stealing a sandwich? I retorted. He let out a deep laugh, and the pigeons surrounding our bench soared away. My friend, it has everything to do with that sandwich. This guy's a lunatic. Hate to break it to you, Juan Marco. Please, call me Marco. Fine, Marco. I hate to break it to you, but stealing is one of the commandments, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm hungry and desperate. I'm not saying that I'm not up for it. I just don't think God would be too happy about it or anything like that. Besides, I was praying for a damn sandwich earlier, and I'm sure as hell still hungry. My friend, it's like this, he sighed, lightly shaking his head. God grants all to those who pray with unwavering faith. How? Well, the Bible doesn't mention that. So it's up to us to figure it out ourselves. Take the sandwich, for example. If you prayed, which I'll grant that you did, you had no faith at all. You let success ride on the hope that maybe that clerk would fall for your awful story and just donate the sandwich to you. That's no good. How can you have faith with so much chance? I looked at the figure of Philip IV towering over the plaza, majestically mounted on a bronze horse. The statue sat on a pedestal, dominating the metallic lions and marble gods adorning the fountain below. Well, isn't that the whole point of faith? I asked. Marco turned and studied the statue some more. No, my friend. That great stone hero up there, Philip, he was a man with faith only in action. His father, also a Philip, had a very similar idea of faith to the one you're talking about. He prayed for things and left the rest to chance. What did he get for it? The Spanish Armada. You know it. A colossal failure. That Philip, though, he pointed again. He understood that passive faith is no better than a dream. Instead, he took decisive action and placed faith in his own abilities, allowing his prayers to be answered by his own skill and might. That's the kind of faith I mean. Faith in one's own actions. Confidence, if you will. It's no good to sit around letting the world decide. You must take matters into your own hands. I marveled at the statue for a while. It gained a whole new meaning, as if Philip IV himself sat up there yelling at me. He was telling me to take from the world what I so desperately needed. A sandwich. Besides, you can't be a good person if you're a dead person. All right. Marco sat upright and stuttered. I think he was startled. What? I stood up and stretched before turning back to him with a smile. Teach me to steal, damn it. I'm hungry. Marco led me to Principe Pio, another neighborhood close to the plaza. This is a wonderful place for rookie thieves, he said. Just far enough from tourists for a severe lack of authorities, but close enough for some great stuff. Real steals, know what I'm saying? I even got started around here myself. The thought of Marco learning to steal brought a smile to my lips. Whoever taught this guy must have had insane patience. We spotted another corner store at the end of the street, and he discreetly pulled me in front of some closed restaurant. Marco and I melted into Principe Pio, blending into the ratty restaurant's facade. Our shitty goal fit quite nicely with the shitty streets. Overall, it was a consistent aesthetic. That's the place, my friend. Are you excited? He asked. I'm hungry. That's no attitude to have before your very first theft, he scowled. Show some enthusiasm. Ugh, all right, I groaned. I'm excited, okay? I can't wait. Now, what's the game plan? Okay, well, before we go, you'll have to learn the secrets behind stealing, he said with a growing grin. There are three key aspects of any good theft. They are disguise, distraction, and departure. Commit them to memory, my friend, because success hinges upon their perfect execution. Right. Let's go then. No, not yet. You heard what I said, but you don't understand. Allow me to explain. Think of stealing like a marriage. The first step is disguise. In marriage, this comes at the beginning. You disguise yourself as a woman's fantasy, gentle and kind in all ways. You create the illusion of safety in your company, the illusion that nothing can go wrong. Next, when you tire of the marriage, as all men eventually do, it is imperative to escape unscathed. This is when the second step comes in, the distraction. The distraction must be innocent and consistent with the disguise so you avoid culpability. Yet it must also be large enough to draw attention away from you, furthering your distance from the blame. A distraction that achieves both is difficult, but it must be done. This can be anything from financial troubles to an invented affair your wife had with Jorge Garcia down the street. Really, anything that keeps your character intact while introducing a massive conflict. Once this conflict peaks and you have piled all the fault onto your bitchy wife, you seize what you desire. In the case of marriage, divorce papers. You move on to the third step, departure. In departure, you must move swiftly, ruthlessly, and neglect to look back. Otherwise, you'll be easily ensnared by the wrath of your now ex-wife, legal troubles, attempts at getting back together, in some cases the threat of murder, things of that nature. Best to avoid consequences wherever you can. I murmured. I looked at Marco with donuts for eyes, and he threw his hands up. You don't get it, do you? No, not really. Fine, I'll show you, he sighed. That way you can learn. Come. Marco made his way to the corner store, abandoning our post outside the restaurant. It was time to make our shitty dream come true. Once inside the shop, Marco immediately walked up to the clerk. Afternoon, sir. I'd like a pack of cigarettes, please. Sure. What kind? You got any reds? Of course. Marco turned up the charm. Liars are often the most seductive, I guess. The seduction wasn't sexual, but the flirtation was on and the clerk was swooning over Marco. Probably, having someone engaging walk into the store hunting for Marlboros was the highlight of his shift. Poor guy. He found a box of reds and handed them to Marco while I stood next to him with a neutral expression. This must be the disguise. That's €5. Ah, sure thing, Marco said, plunging his hands into pockets that I knew were empty. Before he betrayed his poverty, he said, Actually, Pat, can you go grab some beer real quick? Yeah, sure. The distraction? I walked over to the refrigerator in the back. Cans and bottles of beer, luxuries I hadn't even looked at in weeks. What kind do you want? I asked Marco, who was still at the checkout. He deeply pondered the question. 1 second, sir, he said to the clerk. Can I go see what you guys have? The clerk nodded at him. Marco calmly joined me and pointed to a case of beer on the top shelf with 2 fingers. 2 fingers. I instantly understood. A distraction. Marco opened the glass door, holding the box of reds in his teeth, and grabbed 2 cases. He struggled to carry it all. Talking back, he looked like an overwhelmed donkey until halfway to the counter, he clumsily dropped the cases. Shards of glass and golden fluid flooded the aisle. God damn it! I'm so sorry, sir. It's no problem, the clerk said with a laugh. I'll clean this up real quick, and then I'll get you checked out. The clerk disappeared into the storage closet to retrieve a mop and broom. Game over. Marco swiftly snatched a sandwich from the display up front and bolted out of the store. The departure. I hurried after him, abandoning the faint fumbling noises from the closet. We sprinted and zigzagged through Principe Pio until we reached the river a few minutes later. That was amazing, I was panting with my hands on my knees. Marco stood before the river and triumphantly stretched out his arm, pointing the sandwich toward the sunset above. The water behind him reflected a glorious tangerine sky. He held his head high, the emperor of petty theft, the master of destiny, indistinguishable from proud Philip IV. 2 of us walked along the Manzanares to an ordinary bridge called the Puente del Rey. Joking about our heist, we split the sandwich and the cigarettes under the sun's last light. The sky slipped into the ravishing robe of night. "Hey, Marco," I said, placing a cancer stick between my lips. "You never explained how stealing fits in with the commandments and all that. From the Bible, you know?" Marco laughed and the crescent moon smiled. I've come to understand that life doesn't fit neatly into that kind of stuff. "You needed that sandwich a lot more than that clerk needed €3, right?" he asked. I grunted, neither agreeing nor disagreeing, simply acknowledging that he'd spoken. "Look, Pat, I've gone through a lot of life in the short time I've been here. I've lost more than you can imagine, and I've had my fair share of successes too." He chuckled and added, "Unfortunately, not with women." I playfully shook my head and he continued, "My friend, the reality of this world is that doing what's right doesn't always cut it. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. It's not perfect. You might steal and cheat and lie, but that's what it takes to survive. These small crimes, in the bigger picture, aren't really crimes at all." Marco was by all rights a sinner. A master thief, a chain smoker, a terrible sexist, a true man out of time. You couldn't get away with labeling him as good. Still, he was wise and, in some ways, kind. That's gotta count for something, right? I mean, you have to acknowledge the bad and the good when you weigh someone's soul. Small crimes aren't really crimes. I like the sound of that. We stood on the bridge for a while without words. The warm yellow streetlights wavered in the weak current of the river and ushered in warmth like a fireplace. The moon cut the black sky like a scythe. "Hey, Pat, if you don't mind my asking, what brings you to Madrid?" Marco asked. I hardened. Pragmatism has a grueling nature about it. I think it's the pain of your soul dying. In the war of survival, victory often comes at the price of your soul. Every day you stay alive, you jam a knife further into your stomach. Your soul aches and moans and cries, and the waning moon flashes a morbid smirk. But you stay alive. I've got to stay alive. I took a deep breath, sucking the oxygen out of the air. Spain seemed to stand still. I'm in deep shit, Marco." His eyes were serious again, and again I shuddered under the weight of his intense gaze. Who is this guy? The man was no common sandwich thief. He'd lived a life before he taught me to steal. What has he gone through? "Pat, you can tell me." I wish I could. "Marco, I'm sorry. I can't." "Listen, my friend," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "I've been in deep shit so many times. That's why I smell so bad, know what I mean? I've been on the bad side of the worst gangs in Europe. Somehow I survived. I'm still around. I bet I can help you. Just trust me." I wish I could. "Marco, it's not that simple." "Not as simple as the Albanian mafia, huh?" He let out a signature belly laugh. "I'll tell you, Pat, I've managed to evade some of the most dangerous people in Europe." He kept the mood light with his laughs and his jokes, but his eyes left no room for doubt. Marco had dangerous enemies. "Look, Marco, I'm not saying you don't know what you're talking about. I'm not saying the mafia isn't serious. All I can say is this. My shit is deeper than the mafia. You just need to believe that. I gotta keep moving and keep a low profile or I'm fucked. That's why I'm here and that's why I won't be this time tomorrow. I'm just passing through. That's just the way my life is now. I'm sorry, Marco. I really am. I gotta do what I gotta do." Marco's face became stone once more, his grave wrinkles defined by the dim streetlight flames. He'd guessed the scope of my situation and accepted that the gravity was out of his league. Still, he prodded a tiny bit further. "Pat's short for Patrick, I'd imagine?" he asked. I gave him a small nod. Spain stopped standing still. It moved again, fast, rapid, swift motion. The Manzanares' inky surface splashed, and the warm streetlights swirled, and the wind whistled a chaotic waltz, and the crescent moon danced through the darkness. Madrid went up in the flames of discord, and Marco heaved a sigh. "Patrick Parity?" he asked, and once again, the world stopped turning. My eyes bulged like all the water in my face had evaporated. I wheezed a soft puff of air. You don't have to answer, my friend. How did he find out? Did he know all along? I won't ask any further. It doesn't concern me, he said. I turned to look at him. My legs refused to quit shaking. I imagined a bird in a cage at the zoo, staring out at a world of freedom it'll never fly through. What do you mean? My words came out all weak, like I'd been punched in the trachea. I mean, it doesn't matter. I don't care, he said. My stomach settled. Life resumed. I will tell you a bit about the news, though, since it seems like you aren't the most informed. There's a fugitive in Europe named Patrick Parity. Apparently, he killed his wife and son in the States and then booked it to Portugal. The bastard even had the nuts to walk right into the U.S. Embassy in Lisbon. Now he's on the run. They expect he's made it into France by now. You seem a little shocked. So you haven't picked up a newspaper, huh? Since the Lisbon incident, Parity's been big news, my friend. I'm talking Snowden-level notoriety. Seems killing his wife stirred up a lot of rage from the femicide movement. The kid's just the cherry on top. Personally, I don't get why those women are so upset about this specifically. It just seems like a bunch of bitches being bitches, know what I'm saying? Either way, though, Parity's in deep shit. So it was that I learned I was the most famous fugitive of the decade. Great. Listen, Marco, I didn't... Shut up, my friend. Like I said, it doesn't matter. I didn't know what to say. What are you supposed to say in a situation like that? I don't know how much help it'll be, my friend. But let me tell you my story. He broke the silence. His eyes were fixed on a streetlight half a mile or so down the river. Hard to believe that such a dirtbag could have these sporadic moments where he looked like a bodhisattva. But there he was, a sage in the flesh. About 5 years back, I married a woman named Isabella. That bitch! She was a beautiful dancer from Barcelona. I felt I had to have her, make her my wife. So I set into motion my strategy of disguise, distract, and depart. And for a moment, she was mine. The moment, of course, had to end. All moments do. Divorced, I returned alone to Valencia. To me, life was perfect. Unfortunately, it soon became clear that I had chosen the wrong woman to burn. Isabella's father was, as it turns out, intimately associated with the Albanian mafia. He wasn't a fan of my view of women or my view of marriage. And his idea of settling things was to eliminate my view from existence. In essence, I was persona non grata for the mafia, and by extension, most of the continent. I was hunted as a mortal enemy for the next 2 years, and I traveled across the continent clinging to my life. I learned how to live on the run. That's when I decided that you can't sweat the small stuff, and you can't trust a world as cruel as this one. As I went, I crossed paths with some truly amazing people. Sympathetic mafia members who helped me remain undetected, brave souls who assisted me in my time of need. Thanks to their help, I made it to Madrid safely. Unfortunately, each of them paid for their generosity with their life. Today, not a living soul knows or remembers Simon Lopez. I let that name die along with those kind souls, the heroes to whom I am forever indebted. I can never repay them. I think, though, that I was never supposed to. Instead, I am destined to pay it forward. To you, my friend. I looked gravely at the man. Marco and Simon, fool and mentor, stranger and friend. He continued. These people would tell me trade secrets, a bunch of little random stuff here and there about the lifestyle of those mob bosses. Didn't help me much, but I think it might help you. How? I asked softly. He interlaced his fingers and put his hands behind his head. Any idea how the Albanian mafia legally shields its high-ranking members? I looked over my shoulder at him and shook my head. He was smirking, like he'd landed 777s on a slot machine. Monaco, he said. The capital of vice, practically a sovereign state of sin. There, the Italian embassy will grant asylum to anyone with the funds to warrant it. The price tag, as I remember it, is 500,000 euros. Hefty sum, I know. However, if one were short on funds, the Monte Carlo is conveniently located a couple kilometers from the embassy. Not a bad setup. With chance alone, the odds of the casino are heavily stacked against any challenger. Life is just like a casino in that way, my friend. If one is willing to do whatever it takes, though, success is not out of reach. Make your own luck, remember? As I mentioned, Monaco is an epicenter of depravity. The only thing flowing through the Monte Carlo with more abundance than wealth is greed. Monaco. It became my raison d'etre. Until Simon mentioned the billionaire's playground, I was wandering across the Iberian Peninsula with only the vague motivator of survival. But survival for what? In a normal life, you can live without meaning just fine. You can always procrastinate and push off finding your purpose. Most people do, actually. When you're always about to die, though, it helps to have something to live for. And finally, I did. However, that's not the only option, Simon said. He struggled to spit out the words, losing the glint in his eyes. He looked intently at the street light off in the distance. If that individual were to abandon the journey altogether, they could remain in Madrid with me. Of course, I don't know all the variables, but if it's enough, I would happily give that man all the protection and loyalty and sandwiches I have to offer. A stream slid down his face, salty and subtle. His cheeks sparkled like sunstones in the peaceful orange of the streetlights. I wish I could. The mysterious layers of intrigue Simon shrouded himself in had fallen. He wasn't a perfect person. In some respects, he was an awful person. But there he was, crying, right in front of me. He was undeniably human. Unfortunately, I was not. The hope of true freedom was divorced from the reality of true friendship. It was one or the other. Simon, I said, thank you. His lips tightened into a horizontal line parallel to his eyebrows, framing a painting of serenity with his soothing brown eyes as the centerfold. Brown, huh? Never noticed that before. I slowly turned and walked off the bridge. The idea of asylum and the chance to clear my name rang through my ears, almost loud enough to silence the anguish of abandoning my only friend. Almost. Wait, Simon called. Take this. He handed me Juan Marco Dedos' passport. You'll need it as you go east. Simon Lopez is dead, and if you want to make it to Monaco, Patrick Parity needs to die as well. His hand latched onto my forearm after I grabbed the document. The painting on his face changed. Still emitting serenity, his stiff lips faltered and slightly turned up. A smile. The centerfold, that noble pair of eyes, housed the Himalayas in all their immutable tranquility. He really looked like a monk. I shut my eyes and heard him say, I'll remember you, my friend. A jolt. Two sturdy arms wrapped tightly behind my back. Mine hung limp in the air, numbly regaining their senses before moving to rest on his back. Standing at the foot of the Puente del Rey, under the faint glow of streetlights and the glimmer of the moon, I hugged my friend, Simon Lopez, for the last time.